Thank you for joining me to wind down together. Over the weekend, my boyfriend took me into the city into an unused bookstore, and I'm very in love with this person. I'm very happy because I completely forgot about the story from when I was in kindergarten. The story of Anansi, the trickster spider. And I found this book of many stories about this character. It was told to me by my kindergarten teacher. And I remember someone saying that my kindergarten teacher was a queen back in Africa. But now that I'm older, I wonder if that was just a trick in itself. Because, when you're little, when kids are small, they believe everything or anything. So, probably, I don't know if that's true or not. But I wanted to read a couple of things to you while we wind down together. I really like different folk tales, whether it be demons or ghosts or just anything. Folk tales are some of my favorite stories of all time. Tales of Anansi, the trickster spider. The figure of the trickster is central to a great many mythological traditions, from Indra and Narada in Indian legend to the coyote in Native American myth, and of course the fox in European fairy tale. Jacob in the Bible serves the same sort of function in the Bible as Odysseus does in Homer, or as in Maui does in the stories of Hawaii. And why not? The whole world loves a quick-witted corner cutter. There's a reason why we do, though, and it goes well beyond our enjoyment of the unexpected narrative twist. The satisfaction of seeing a problem solved, a quandary cleverly avoided or neatly finessed. The reality is that we want to see the rules broken, because this implies possibility and freedom, but also want to be reminded that there are rules. Without a stable, accommodating order, we know we are never really going to feel at home, but we want to have a hall pass of some sort. This is where the trickster comes in, an exemplar of what we might attain with talent, ingenuity, and daring. Anansi the spider embodies all these things. How Anansi became a spider from the Ligomba people. A very long time ago there lived a king who had amongst his possessions a very magnificent ram, larger and taller than any other specimen in the entire country. The ram was more precious to him than anything else he owned, and he made it quite clear to his subjects that the animal must be allowed to roam wherever it chose, and to be allowed to eat as much food as it desired, even if the people themselves were forced to go hungry. If anyone should ever hit or injure the king's ram, that man should certainly die. Every citizen of the kingdom obeyed the king's orders without a great deal of complaint. But there was one among them, a wealthy farmer named Anansi, who was particularly proud of the crops he raised. Everyone suspected that he would not tolerate a visit from the king's ram, and they prayed amongst themselves that such an event might never happen. One day, however, when the rains had begun to fall, and his crops were already as tall as his waist, Anansi went out to make a final inspection of his fields. He was very pleased with what he saw, and was just about to return to his farmhouse when he noticed in the distance an area of land where the corn had been trampled underfoot and the young shoots eaten away. There in the middle of the field, still munching away quite happily, stood the king's ram. Anansi was so furious, he hurled a large pebble at the animal, intending only to frighten him away. But the stone hit the ram right between the eyes, and before he had quite realized what he had done, the animal lay dead at his feet. Anansi did not know what he should do. Like everybody else in the village, he was only too familiar with the king's orders, and he knew he would face certain death if his crime was discovered. He leaned back against the shea butter tree, wondering how to resolve the dreadful mess. Suddenly a nut fell on his head from one of the branches above. Anansi picked it up and ate it. He liked the taste of it very much, so he shook the tree until several more nuts fell to the ground. Then the most fantastic idea entered his head. He picked up the nuts and put them in his pocket. He quickly lifted the ram and climbed the tree with him. As soon as he had tied the animal to a strong bow, he descended once more and headed off towards the house of his friend Kusumbuli, the spider. Anansi found his friend at home, and the two sat down and began to chat. After a few moments, Anansi took one of the shea nuts from his pocket and handed it to his friend. "This nut has an excellent flavor," said Kusumbuli, as he sat chomping on the ripe flesh. "Tell me, where did you come across such a fine crop?" Anansi promised to show the spider the exact spot and led him to the tree where the nuts were growing in large clusters. "You'll have to shake quite hard to loosen them," Anansi advised Kusumbuli. "Don't be afraid, the trunk is a strong one." So the spider began shaking the tree violently, and as he did so, the dead ram fell to the ground. "Oh, my friend," cried Anansi at once, "what have you done? Look at the king's ram is lying at your feet, and you have killed him." Kusumbuli turned pale as a wave of panic swept over him. "There is only one thing you can do now," Anansi urged the spider. "Go and unburden your conscience at once. Tell the king precisely what has happened, and with any luck, he will understand that the whole affair was a most unfortunate accident." Kusumbuli thought that this was good advice, so he picked up the dead ram and set off to confess his crime, hoping the king would be in a good mood. The road towards the king's palace brought him past his own home. The spider went indoors to bid a sad farewell to his wife and children, believing that he might never set eyes on them again. Anansi stood at the entrance while Kusumbuli went into the back room and told his wife everything that had happened. She listened attentively to what he said and immediately saw that there was some trick involved. "I have never seen a ram climb a tree before, Kusumbuli," she said to him. "Use your head. Anansi has something to do with this, and you are taking the blame for him. Hear me now, and do exactly as I say." So she advised her husband that he must leave Anansi behind and pretend to go alone in search of the king. After he had gone some distance, she told him he was to rest and then return home, and announced that all had turned out well in the end. The spider agreed to do this, and asked Anansi if he would be so good as to look after his wife and children. His friend promised to watch over them faithfully, and the spider set off on his travels, winking at his wife as he moved away. Several hours later, Kusumbuli returned to his home, smiling from ear to ear as he embraced his family. "Come and celebrate with us, Anansi," he cried excitedly. "I have been to see the king, and he was not at all angry with me. In fact, he said he had no use for a dead ram, and insisted that I help myself to as much of the meat as I wanted." At this, Anansi became enraged and shouted, "What? What? You have been given all that meat when it was I who took the trouble to kill that ram. I should have been given my fair share. You deserved none of it." Kusumbuli and his wife now leaped upon Anansi and bound his hands and legs. Then they dragged him to the king's palace and reported to their ruler the whole unpleasant affair. Anansi squirmed on the floor and begged for the king's mercy, But the king could not control his fury, and he raised his foot to kick Anansi as he lay on the ground. The king kicked so hard that Anansi broke into 1,000 pieces and scattered themselves all over the room. And that is how Anansi came to be such a small spider, and that is why you will find him in every corner of the house, awaiting the day when someone will put all the pieces together again. Thank you again so much for joining me, and I hope you have a gorgeous week. I wish you many blessings, and goodbye.